her usual charming self. My doctor, on the other hand, was exceptionally charming. Boy, did he work his magic. Within seconds, he put my daughter at ease. The moment I saw her flash a smile, I knew I had done the right thing. So, invited my doctor, I understand you have a question for me. And then she asked, so sweetly and so quietly, what are the sikuim that there will be a miracle? What are the chances that there will be a miracle? Again, silence. Anticipation. A child's innocent hope dangling in the air. What kind of miracle? Prompted my doctor. A miracle, she explained, that the cancer will go away. Again, silence and wonder. How would he answer that? Then my doctor leaned forward, clasped his hands together, and answered carefully, well, every year and every month and every day, there are scientists and doctors who are working on and discovering new drugs. For example, the medication that is working so well on your mother did not exist 3 years ago. So I think that it is reasonable to expect a miracle. He paused, then asked cautiously, how do you think your mother is doing? Okay, she answered sweetly, quiet once again. She looked up at me for reassurance, then continued, she's tired a lot. And how do you feel? He answered. Okay, she answered. That's good, responded my doctor, because your mother is doing well. So you should be able to do what every normal kid your age does. That's what I want, she agreed enthusiastically. And that's the key, my doctor said, turning towards me. What? I asked, not quite getting it. They just want to be normal kids. That's why, he dropped his voice and motioned to the door. He is out there. And that's what she, he smiled at my daughter, is telling you in here. And that was that. My daughter had gotten her answer and more. I went outside and told my son and daughter that they could run to the bus by themselves without their grandmother, since she would just slow them down. I did not have to say it twice. In a blink, the kids were off, racing down the hall. And that's a little snapshot of what it's like dealing with children and their worlds and the balance, and trying to find that balance. I introduced this as a question of faith. In the beginning, when someone is sick, people wish you refuah shlema. You should have a complete recovery. When I was first diagnosed, and people would say to me, refuah shlema, I got angry. What do you mean refuah shlema? I'm not going to have a refuah shlema. Wish me long life. That's good. That's what I want. I want to live with the cancer thing for a long, long time. And I said, you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. God can do everything. And I changed. You know what? Wish me a refuah shlema. Maybe the cancer cure is going to come in my lifetime. Maybe God's going to make a miracle and make it go away. You don't know. But be open to the fact that God can do miracles. And that's a lesson that I learned from my youngest daughter. To be open to the fact that we have to do our hishtadlut. We have to live in the real world. But we can pray to God and we can ask for God, give me a miracle. Give me a refuah shlema. Make the doctors be your shlichim. Make the doctors be your, what's it called, emissaries? Messengers. Help them to find a cure. I used to joke, I would just have to live long enough to find a cure for cancer. I'm going to read you one more post, and then, which I wrote very, very recently. It's a much more recent post. And then, if you have questions, you can ask me.
I don't know if you mentioned the name of the blog.
Oh, that's another story. So, it's such a big decision when you do a blog. What are you going to call your blog, right? And once you get a name, that's the name of your blog. So we had this whole trying to be creative. How am I going to find a name for my blog that's going to represent the blog, have to do with cancer, but not be down, and kind of capture what I wanted to do. So I was hanging out with friends of mine, and we're like talking about stuff, and we're like for an hour, we're like throwing out all these just really stupid ideas. And finally said, okay, we're going to give up for today, we'll think about it another time. And as we were leaving, I was talking with my girlfriend, and I was mentioning, I wanted to share this with you. I was mentioning what I do at chemotherapy. So I'll tell you that my approach to cancer and chemotherapy has not been traditional. Now, what does that mean? I'm not talking about alternative stuff. In that way, I'm very traditional. But I have to go to chemotherapy every week. And you go to chemotherapy, and you're basically there the whole day. And I learned very early on, don't plan on getting out by noon. Because if you plan on getting out by noon, even if you get out at 12:30, you're agitated about being late. And if you have something scheduled and you're not out till 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon, it can kind of shoot your day. So from the very beginning, I really learned chemo day is chemo day. I plan nothing. I clear my schedule. This is what I do. But what makes it a special day is I make dates with friends. Chemo date for me is a day that it's true. I go to the hospital. I get my treatment. I can describe the day for you. It's filled with all sorts of really wonderful stuff which you should all never know anything about. And I decided very early on if I have to go to the hospital, and I'm going to get there at 9, and at the best of circumstances, I'm going to leave the hospital at 1 or 2, and on a typical day, I'm probably going to leave at 3 or 4, and sometimes I'm going to have a bad day, and I'm going to be there from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. I just don't want to just sit there doing nothing, right? I said, okay, I have all these friends who I never get to see because they're too busy, and I'm too busy, and who has time to sit down and even have a cup of coffee? So I'm going to meet my friends for coffee and chemo. And they'll come and we'll hang out and we'll sit and we'll talk. We'll do all sorts of stuff. And so I was mentioning this to my friend, and that became the name of my blog. My blog is called Coffee and Chemo. But that's what happens at chemotherapy. I make people laugh, but it's true. You have to schedule me 2 months in advance. I schedule it 2 months in advance. Who's coming what week? Who's going to be my date for that day? They come. I show up, they're in charge of everything else. You want snacks, you bring snacks. You want to do whatever, it's fine. And we just sit and we talk for a long time, actually. And I've had several people say to me at the end of the day, is it okay to tell you I had a really good time? And yeah, the truth is, sometimes we have a really good time. In fact, most of the time we have a really good time. Because, when do you get a chance to sit uninterrupted, just talking with a friend, guilt-free, right? You don't feel bad about the dishes in your sink. You don't have to worry about your homework assignments. You don't have to worry about this because you can't do anything there anyway. So it's complete time that's a gift of time. And I've seen over the course of the time that I've been in chemotherapy that coming in with that attitude, coming in with friends, coming in to chemotherapy, one of the nurses said to me once, like, you look like you're a student here for research, not like a patient who's about to get treatment. That this is just part of life, and this is a good thing, and it affects the people around you as well. And, I've had patients come up to me and said, whose diagnosis, by the way, has been much simpler and more straightforward than mine, and like, oh man, if you can have this kind of attitude, like, I'm okay. I think, that's great. That even as a patient, that I can help other people to deal with also what they're going through. So, the same things that I've been telling you now. So I wrote actually about this, and I wrote a post called Choose Life. And I wrote it in May, just now. Our lives are filled with choices. Almost 2 years ago, when I learned about my diagnosis, I made a choice, a conscious choice, about how I would live my life. I stumbled by accident on frightening survival statistics of women diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. Only 20% are still alive 5 years after their diagnosis. I determined right then and there that I intended to be part of that 20%. I wish I could remember which angel directed me to the fabulous article by Stephen Jay Gould, "The Median is Not the Message." I think it might have been someone from Shasheret, a wonderful Jewish American organization that provided me with tremendous support in those devastating initial weeks before I found appropriate support here in Israel. If you have not read it already, then I recommend doing so now. Well, you can't do it so now, but I do recommend it as an article. Go ahead, it will reshape the way you view the world. I read The Median is Not the Message and realized that my determination to beat the odds is a rational possibility and not just wishful thinking. Meanwhile, Moshe, my husband, was reading everything he could about my disease. My dear, loving, sensitive husband was devastated by the statistics. I knew that Moshe, for whom logic and cold science are fundamental to how he views the world, needed to read this article. That article was the greatest gift I could give him. But I did not stop there. I had already begun formulating my 20-year plan. I figured that if I did end up living for another 20 years or more, it would be an awful shame to live all that time worrying about dying tomorrow. Besides, I joked, I just need to live long enough for them to discover a cure. There is so much research going on every day. Who knows what new medicines and miracle cures might be just a few years down the road. We do not know what the future will bring. So why live expecting the worst? What a waste of our valuable time and energy. In the past, I loved the adage, expect the worst, hope for the best, and you will never be disappointed. Suddenly, this approach to life no longer served me well. I shifted paradigms. I chose to expect the best. I chose to believe that I would live and that I would have a future. In Parshat Nitzavim, which we read on Shabbat just before Rosh Hashanah, during the time when Jews are focused on self-evaluation and repentance, Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher, addresses Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, and proclaims, Ha'edotai v'chem hayom et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz. The earth and the sky stands before you today as witness. Hachayim v'hamavet natati lefanecha. I have placed before you life and death. Habracha v'hakalala. A blessing and a curse. Uvacharta v'chayim. Choose life. L'ma'an tichyeh, that you may live. Ata v'zaracha, you and your future generations. If anyone has any questions, you can leave it off, please. You don't have to have any questions, but you must have questions. Go ahead.
Like often with things that are common, like people become very desensitized to it. Like in South Africa, I mean, everyone's either like knows someone that's been hijacked or broken into, and like when you hear the story, you're like, are they like, did they get hurt? And they're like, no, they just took the car, they just took the TV, and you're like, oh, okay, fine. And like you forget about it because like it happens to everyone. But like a friend of mine like went through it, and like for her, no one realized like how much of a trauma it like really was because it's so common. So like cancer, everyone knows someone that maybe has had cancer or like things like that. So have you felt that like there's this massive desensitization to it, and that people see it to like people don't see it individually like to the extent that it should be seen. People like have put it under this umbrella idea.
It's a very interesting question, and I see several parts to your question, and each of them has a slightly different angle. In general, I think that the fact that there's so much cancer awareness now is a good thing, because it means that people take it seriously and know that if they go get checked and they can get caught, God forbid if they have cancer, that it's caught early and they're fine. And that, in general, contributes to it being less scary for people, and also to more women surviving, because cancer is caught earlier. And as it should be for most people, it's ended. So on one level, it's true that there's a lot of cancer awareness, and that makes it less scary or heavy, and something very good